I mean, we have 24/7 unlimited access to physically, verbally aggressive material that clearly has an impact on our attitudes.
There's a kind of silence that follows every craving, a hollow space that no one talks about. It creeps in quietly after the moment's thrill is over, and it whispers something ancient. You just gave away more than you know. If you've ever felt that lingering emptiness, even after seeking release in secret ways, you're not alone. But what most people don't realize is that what you're losing is not just physical energy. It's your divine essence. You're letting go of your light. The very light that was placed in you to awaken your gifts, to activate your path, and to carry your purpose forward, slips away a little each time. And those who are chosen, those born with a deeper calling, cannot afford to waste what was never meant to be discarded. From ancient times, sages, mystics, and warriors have warned of this. In Eastern traditions, it was said that your life force sits like a coiled dragon at the base of your spine. In Taoism, it is called Jing, your essence, your deepest battery of energy. And when it's gone, it does not come back easily. It takes months to rebuild what only takes seconds to lose. That energy fuels your clarity, your strength, your intuition, your dreams. And when it's spilled, you don't just weaken your body, you weaken your connection to Source. There's a reason monks and spiritual initiates were told to keep their energy sealed, not because they were trying to shame the body, but because they knew what it cost to leak the sacred. Let me be clear, this is not about guilt. This is about power. You were not born ordinary. If you're watching this, there is a strong chance that you felt the weight of a bigger life waiting behind the veil. You felt the pull to evolve, to awaken, to lead, even if you've fallen again and again. But what no one told you is that your gifts, your magnetism, and even your ability to manifest are tied directly to your ability to hold your energy inside you. Your body is a temple. Think of it like this. Your body is a temple, and your temple holds a sacred oil that fuels your lamp. The brighter the lamp, the clearer your path becomes. But if that oil is constantly poured out for short-term pleasure, the light dims and you walk in shadows. Over time, this dimness becomes your new normal. You forget what real light feels like. This is why so many chosen ones feel lost, not because they're not gifted, but because they're running on empty. One of the oldest parables from the East speaks of a man who carried water up a hill every day in a cracked pot. Every time he reached the top, the pot was half empty, and he wondered why his strength never grew. Only after sealing the cracks did he realize he wasn't weak, he was leaking. Most of us are the same. It's not that we lack power, it's that we don't know where we're draining it. When you break the loop, when you learn to keep that sacred oil within you, it's like discovering a secret fuel source. Your eyes become sharper. Your energy becomes magnetic. You speak and people listen. You walk and things begin to align. You no longer need to chase. You attract. Your aura thickens. Your nervous system calms. Your dreams become vivid and your confidence returns, not as ego, but as presence. That's because you've stopped borrowing your power and started storing it. Even in modern studies, though quietly ignored by the mainstream, researchers have noticed that when someone abstains from constantly seeking pleasure through release, they begin to produce higher levels of focus and even dopamine stability, the very brain chemistry linked to drive, vision, and creativity. But the ancient ones didn't need brain scans to know that. They could feel it. One story that echoes this wisdom is the tale of Samson from sacred text. He was a man born with supernatural strength, destined to protect his people. But when he gave away his secret, his power unraveled. That tale wasn't just about hair. It was about energy, sacred energy, the kind that chosen ones must protect, not out of fear, but out of devotion to something higher. In today's world, we're bombarded with temptations designed to hijack our energy. Quick images, endless scrolling, artificial pleasure with no real connection. These aren't accidents, they're traps. They dull the senses, weaken the will, and keep powerful souls locked in cycles of self-distraction. But when you step away, even for a week, and feel what it's like to be fully alive in your own energy, it's like lightning moves through your bones. You laugh differently. You wake up sharper. You begin to remember, this is who I really am. You see, your powers were never taken from you. They were only buried beneath habits that numb your light. And if you're wondering how long it takes to reclaim it, the answer is simple. The moment you stop draining yourself is the moment the rebuilding begins. But for now, just know this: the most powerful version of you isn't somewhere far away. They are already here, just waiting for you to stop dimming the flame. What science hints at but rarely says out loud. They say science and spirit are far apart, but the truth is, the two are whispering the same message, just in different languages. One speaks through data, the other through intuition, memory, and soul. And when it comes to your energy, your sacred, creative, life-shaping force, there's a famous psychological study that quietly backs up what mystics and monks have known for thousands of years. Let's talk about the Stanford marshmallow experiment. It sounds innocent enough, but buried inside it is a secret truth about power, self-control, and the kind of energy that determines your future. Back in the late 1960s and early 70s, a psychologist named Walter Mischel gathered a group of children and placed them one by one in a room with a marshmallow. Each child was told, "You can eat this one marshmallow now, or if you wait for 15 minutes without touching it, you'll get 2. Then the researchers left the room and watched. Some kids couldn't wait. They grabbed the marshmallow almost instantly. Others struggled, wiggled, stared at the wall, covered their eyes, sang songs, anything to distract themselves. A few succeeded, a few waited, a few chose to delay pleasure for something greater. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Mischel didn't stop there. He tracked those same kids over the course of decades. He checked in with them again and again through school, college, and even into their careers. What he found was shocking. The ones who waited, who had self-control, grew up to be more focused, more successful, healthier, and even happier. They earned more money, had better relationships, scored higher on tests, and they felt more fulfilled. Their ability to delay a short-term craving for a long-term vision shaped their entire future. Now, no one in that study mentioned sacred energy, the body's creative fuel, or anything spiritual. But think about the pattern. The same lesson hides underneath. When you give in to every impulse, when you let cravings lead the way, your power slips through your fingers. But when you choose to hold, to wait, to transmute, you grow stronger in ways the world can't see, but your soul can feel. This is exactly what the ancients meant when they warned us to protect the creative energy in our bodies, not just for purity, but for purpose. You see, the momentary release we often chase isn't random. It's deeply tied to the dopamine system in the brain. Dopamine is the brain's reward signal. It tells you, that felt good, do it again. But the problem is, over time, the more we give in, the more we need to chase even harder to feel the same thing. The reward becomes empty, and the desire becomes stronger. It creates a loop, one that doesn't fill you, but drains you. What this means is that every time you give in to those urges, especially when done alone in secret, with no connection or love, you're training your brain to get used to less depth and more distraction. It becomes harder to focus, harder to create, harder to connect with others. You begin to live on the surface. But you weren't born for the surface. You were born to go deep, into truth, into wisdom, into vision, into divine power. And just like the children in the marshmallow study, you have a choice. Every time the craving rises, you're standing in that room again. Do you give in now and lose a bit of your spark? Or do you sit with the fire, breathe through it, and let it shape you into something greater? And if you're wondering, why is this such a big deal for chosen ones? Here's why. When a soul is chosen, it carries more light, but it also carries more responsibility. Your energy, your thoughts, your actions, they create ripples beyond what you can see. That sacred fire inside you is not just for you. It's there to heal others, to build things, to speak truths, to create art, to touch lives. But if that fire is constantly put out through meaningless release, your voice dulls, your vision fades, and you wonder why your power feels distant. Even in modern spiritual psychology, there's a growing awareness of how energy flows affect our nervous systems, our aura, and even our leadership. Dr. Joe Dispenza, a researcher and spiritual teacher, has said something powerful. When you stop the body from running its automatic programs, you begin to free yourself from the past. And here's the truth. That automatic program, that loop of desire and release, is exactly what's keeping many from becoming who they really are. But here's the good news. You don't need to fight yourself to stop. You don't need to be at war with your body. You simply need to remember who you are. Because when you remember that you are sacred, powerful, and full of divine potential, something shifts. The cravings lose their grip, the mind clears, the fire begins to rise, not fall, and your energy, that beautiful energy, starts to build. You'll begin to see it in your eyes, in your presence, in your stillness. Suddenly, people feel something when you walk into the room, not because of your words, but because of your energy. It becomes obvious that you're holding something powerful, something untouchable, and the world responds. That's the moment when you realize you were never meant to give away your fire for a moment's comfort. You were meant to carry it like a torch. Your brain and habits. Now, for those who still think this is all just spiritual talk with no ground to stand on, let's bring in the science. Because what's happening here isn't just ancient wisdom, it's also something modern research is beginning to uncover. Let's start with the way your brain works. When you overindulge in that habit, yes, the one we've been hinting at, you start to wear down your own dopamine system. Dopamine is the chemical your brain uses to feel pleasure and motivation. But when you release too often, especially without love, connection, or meaning, your brain becomes less sensitive to dopamine. You stop feeling the highs of everyday life. Food loses its flavor. Music loses its magic. Your drive disappears. This condition even has a name: anhedonia, the inability to feel joy. But it doesn't stop there. Frequent release has also been linked to drops in testosterone, the hormone responsible for energy, mental clarity, and drive. One study found that just 7 days without releasing led to a powerful spike in testosterone by over 140%. Imagine what that kind of boost could do for your body, your mind, your focus, and your mission. This is why many athletes and warriors in history would avoid release before battles or major events. They were protecting their fuel. And then there's a darker side that most people don't want to talk about: the effect of constant digital stimulation, screens, clips, pixels. Your brain starts to form patterns around images, not people. Over time, this can rewire how your brain responds to real-life connection, real touch, real intimacy. You may find it harder to bond deeply or to feel turned on by reality. What's happening here is not just about the body, it's about your ability to love, to relate, and to feel. But here's where things get even more powerful. Researchers have discovered that holding back, practicing what's called retention can actually increase the number of androgen receptors in your brain. What does that mean? It means your body gets better at using the testosterone you already have. So instead of just trying to produce more, your system becomes more sensitive to what's already there. More energy, more clarity, more inner strength. Retention has also been linked to a more reactive nervous system, in a good way. Your reflexes sharpen, your movements become quicker, your senses more alert. There's a reason martial artists, monks, and even certain Olympic athletes have taken this practice seriously. They knew they were storing something rare and sacred inside. And then we get to a practice most people have never even heard of, but it has existed for thousands of years: ejaculation. The ability to experience pleasure, deep waves of energy, even full-body bliss, without the release. It's been practiced for generations in Taoist sexual alchemy, and it's not just about holding back, it's about learning to feel more without draining the body. The modern world may not talk about it, but science is starting to catch on. This is what they called the small heavenly circuit, a path where energy circulates up the spine, governor vessel, and down the front of the body, conception vessel, transforming raw lust into clarity, compassion, and higher states of awareness. Modern spiritual teachers have echoed this. Yogic teachings describe a similar idea in the Kundalini system, where sexual energy, when not expelled, can be awakened and used to activate dormant parts of the soul. Tantric paths, often misunderstood in the West, also speak of pleasure without release as a sacred art, one that leads to union with the divine, not just a physical high. Today, even science is beginning to understand what the ancients knew intuitively. Neurobiological studies on dopamine, testosterone, and neuroplasticity show that frequent ejaculation affects the brain's reward system and drains the body's energy stores. Conversely, retention increases focus, drive, and emotional balance. Early findings suggest that waves of pleasure can still be experienced without release if the nervous system is trained for it. This isn't just theory anymore, it's physiology. Ejaculation, then, is the bridge between ancient wisdom and modern science. It reminds us that pleasure is not the enemy. It's a gift, one that can be either spent in a moment or alchemized into something eternal. Many who practice this report increased energy, stronger concentration, and even better prostate health, despite the old myth that frequent release is needed for that. The truth is, when done properly, this practice allows the body to experience all the benefits of pleasure without losing the vital nutrients and life force that exist in your seed. And here's the key point most people miss. What you carry inside you is creative energy. It's the same energy that creates life. And every time you give it away without purpose, you lose a bit of that potential. But when you keep it in, when you circulate it, channel it, respect it, it transforms, it rises, it awakens, and it begins to feed something much deeper than the body. It feeds your soul. Monks in the East knew this. So did warriors in the West. And today, there are thousands of people rediscovering it. They're not just avoiding a habit, they're unlocking a secret power that modern culture has tried to bury in shame and noise. Because this isn't about guilt. It's about remembrance. It's about realizing that your energy was never meant to be wasted. It was meant to be used. Not just for pleasure, but for creation, for building, for becoming, for lighting up your path and the paths of those around you. And when you learn to walk with this energy instead of spending it, you stop living on the surface. You start to remember what you're truly capable of. Return to the source. There's a reason ancient yogis chose the path of stillness, breath, and restraint, not as punishment, but as preparation for something higher. For them, the energy that the world casually wastes was seen as sacred fuel. It was the fire of the divine sleeping within you, waiting to be raised, not drained. In the yogic tradition, this energy is known as ojas. Ojas isn't just some mystical concept, it's the essence of vitality, purity, and spiritual strength. The yogis believed that ojas is built through practices like meditation, right living, deep sleep, and yes, through the conservation of one's life force. When preserved and transformed, ojas becomes tejas, the radiance of awakened energy, and then kundalini, the serpent power that rises from the base of the spine to the crown of the head, awakening full consciousness. Yogis weren't just sitting in caves to escape the world. They were preparing their bodies like temples, not for mere survival, but for illumination. And they understood something science is only beginning to hint at, that this sacred fluid in your body is more than biology. It's electricity, it's magnetism, it's light. When this force is retained and purified, it rises. When it's wasted, the body may feel pleasure for a moment, but the spirit slowly dims. And over time, people forget they were ever meant to shine. But these teachings didn't belong only to the East. Early Christian mystics, often hidden behind cloistered walls and misunderstood by mainstream doctrine, spoke of this same truth in different words. They described the body as a vessel for Christ consciousness, not just in symbolic terms, but as a real living experience of divine union. They saw the body not as something dirty to escape, but as a sacred tool for transmutation. St. Augustine, long before he became a church father, confessed to the struggle of chasing pleasures that left him empty. He later wrote about the fire of grace and how divine love could purify even the deepest impulses. But even more direct were mystics like St. Teresa of Avila, who spoke of spiritual ecstasy in ways that resembled kundalini rising, a heat in the spine, a swelling in the heart, and a complete melting into divine love. She never used the term energy, but her writings describe what sounds exactly like the inner fire yogis speak of. A fire that rises, cleanses, and transforms the soul from within. These early mystics didn't just suppress desire, they learned to transform it. They didn't shame the body, they trained it. They didn't avoid intimacy with the divine, they sought it with everything they had, even if it meant giving up the world's quick comforts. Because they knew that sacred force, when held with reverence, doesn't just bring control, it brings communion. In many monasteries, the practice of celibacy wasn't about denial, it was about preparation. Monks and nuns were preparing themselves to become vessels of light. They fasted, they prayed, they meditated in silence, not to earn points with God, but to burn away the noise of the flesh and become open to the divine whisper that only comes when the lower cravings quiet down. The yogis call this state brahmacharya, not as a set of rules, but as a path of alignment. It's not just no pleasure, it's choosing the greater pleasure, the joy that doesn't fade, the peace that doesn't get weaker after the act, the bliss that doesn't cost you your power. Now imagine blending those two worlds, the depth of Christian mystics and the precision of yogic energy science. One speaks of surrender, the other of awakening. But both are speaking of the same river, flowing through the human spine, rising from the root of instinct into the crown of divine realization. And what blocks that river most often? The daily leaks of our sacred power. Every time we give in without thought, release without meaning, or chase without stillness, we're throwing away the very fuel that could lift us into something greater. That doesn't mean shame, it doesn't mean fear, it means choice. Because when you know what's really at stake, your decisions change. You begin to see your energy not as something random, but as something royal, something worthy of guarding, like gold in a temple, something that, when it's finally ready to rise, can unlock a version of you that the world has never seen. And here's the miracle. That version has always been inside. Your body is already wired for this. The channels are already there, the Sushumna, the Ida, the Pingala. The breath is already moving the energy. The heart is already calling for union. All that's missing is remembrance. All that's missing is devotion to something higher than momentary release. Because this energy was never meant to just rise, it was meant to return. Return to the source, return to God, return to the place where desire turns into fire and fire turns into freedom. So what would happen if you took even 30 days to honor this force within you? Not as a rule, not as a test, but as a sacred invitation. What would happen if you treated your body as a living temple, your mind as a receiver of light, and your seed not as a burden to release, but as a gift to protect? Those who walk this path begin to glow. Their eyes clear, their spine straightens, their words carry weight, and their heart no longer feels lost because it has begun to remember the sound of home. This is not suppression, this is transcendence, and when the energy rises and the soul remembers, there is no turning back. Alchemical transformation of life energy. There is a silence that doesn't come from turning off the noise outside, but from going so deep inside yourself that you begin to hear the hum of creation itself. It's not empty, it's not still, it's alive. And it is in this silence that true transformation begins. Modern mystics are beginning to understand what the ancients always knew, that your life force isn't just meant for survival or pleasure. It's meant for alchemy. This means change that goes beyond the body. It means turning something raw into something radiant, something instinctive into something divine. This isn't a theory, it's a practice. And it begins the moment you stop chasing energy outside yourself and start gathering it inward. Think of your life force like firewood. You can burn it all at once for a quick burst of warmth, or you can build something with it, something sacred, something powerful, something that holds light. In ancient African traditions, particularly in the belief system of the Dogon people of Mali, there is a teaching about inner energy that mirrors this exactly. The Dogon speak of a life force called Nyama. Nyama is the invisible power that lives inside every being, every tree, every breath, every sound. But in humans, it has the potential to grow, if protected, honored, and used with care. They believe that every word you speak, every act you perform, either increases or scatters your Nyama. It's not just physical energy, it's spiritual magnetism. And it can either lift you into wisdom or weaken your spirit. The more stillness, clarity, and intention you bring into your life, the more your Nyama becomes like a concentrated flame. Not just heat, but light. Modern science might call this focus or flow. But the mystics know it's more than that. It's presence, it's power that no one can see but everyone can feel. So how do you build it? You stop wasting it. You stop leaking it through mindless habits, scattered thoughts, and unconscious patterns. You stop pouring it out in moments of false pleasure and start drawing it back in through deep breath, stillness, and sacred attention. This is the hidden path the mystics walk. It's not about rules, it's about alignment. Take, for example, a man who no longer gives away his fire every time desire calls. Instead, he breathes, he listens, he channels it upward. After a while, his walk changes, his words carry more weight, his eyes hold a kind of quiet lightning. People feel it without knowing why. Or a woman who once gave away her energy trying to be seen now chooses to sit in stillness and remember who she truly is. She no longer needs to chase love because she has become a source of it. And the people around her feel drawn to that light, not because she's louder, but because she's clearer. That's what this transformation is about. It's not about pretending to be perfect. It's about being present. It's about stopping the constant outflow of energy and letting that river rise inside you. In ancient Taoist practices, this inner rising was called cultivating the inner elixir. In Egyptian mysticism, it was seen as the serpent rising through the spine, just like Kundalini in India. In African traditions like the Dogons, it was your niyama, and your destiny depended on how well you carried it. Every culture has a name for this force. Every spiritual tradition knows what happens when you waste it, and what happens when you refine it. And here's the truth. You don't need to be a monk or a sage to start this work. You only need to slow down, to stop leaking your fire into things that leave you empty, and to start feeding that flame in small, simple ways. Close your eyes, breathe deeper, listen to your body, hold your energy like it matters, because it does. When you stop giving away what was never meant to be wasted, the real transformation begins, not overnight, but day by day, breath by breath, stillness by stillness. And something changes in the way you move through the world. People may not know what it is, but they'll feel it, and so will you. You'll begin to feel more alive, not because you did more, but because you gave less away. You'll begin to think clearer, feel deeper, walk straighter. You won't just have energy, you'll become energy. This is the alchemy of the sacred, the path of stillness, the return to power, and the world may never teach you this. But your body remembers, and if you listen long enough, it will lead you back to the source. There are no tricks to inner peace. There's a reason the oldest stories we've ever told don't sound like modern success books. They aren't filled with tricks, shortcuts, or how-tos. They don't promise power if you do more. In fact, many of them warn of the exact opposite. They whisper, in quiet tones, of what happens when a soul tries to rise too quickly, without discipline, without devotion, without direction, and always there is one lesson beneath it all. What you do with your energy, especially the sacred creative kind, will either bind you to the earth or carry you to the sky. Take the story of Samson from the Hebrew texts. A man born with unshakable strength, chosen by divine forces, yet undone not by his enemies, but by his own surrender to fleeting desire. The tale doesn't simply warn against a woman or a haircut. It's deeper than that. It's about how sacred power, when tied to impulse instead of purpose, becomes self-destructive. The hair was only symbolic. The real loss came when Samson gave away his inner fire, the very force that made him different. Then there's the myth of Icarus from Greek legend, a boy gifted wings, warned not to fly too high toward the sun or too low toward the sea. But the thrill of the height, the rush of freedom, pulled him upward until the wax melted and he fell. Again, this isn't just about hubris. It's about energy ungrounded, inspiration without inner restraint, passion without purpose. It's the parable of every person who lets their flame rise too fast and forgets to anchor it in truth. And then there's a softer story, one often overlooked, the Buddhist parable of the musician's string. A student once asked the Buddha how to find balance in life. The Buddha asked, "What happens if a string on your lute is too tight?" The student answered, "It breaks. And if it's too loose, it won't play." The Buddha smiled. Then the path is like the string, not too tight, not too loose. In other words, your energy must be held, not forced, not suppressed, but tuned with care. This is the secret all the mystics, saints, and sages hinted at. Not to fear your sacred energy, but to respect it, to give it a home, to hold it like a candle in the wind. In early Christian mysticism, this teaching took on a silent form. The desert fathers and mothers, those who fled the noise of society to live in spiritual solitude, believed the body held a fire that, when left unchecked, burned. Outward in distraction, lust and pride. But if contained and turned inward, that same fire became a ladder to the divine. They called it purity, but not in the modern sense of shame or fear. Their purity was clarity, a way of protecting the mind from fog, a way of walking cleanly through the world so that your inner light could reflect something higher. They knew, when you stop giving your energy to everything, you begin to remember the one thing. Even the Bhagavad Gita, one of India's most sacred texts, speaks to this. Arjuna, the warrior, is overwhelmed, not by battle, but by confusion. He has strength, yes, but his heart is scattered. Krishna tells him, "Gather yourself. Withdraw your senses as a tortoise withdraws its limbs. Then you will know peace." That's not a command to become less. It's a reminder that all real power comes when you pull yourself inward, not outward. The idea shows up again in Sufi poetry, especially in the words of Rumi, who wrote, "Don't get lost in your pain. Know that one day your pain will become your cure." What pain was he talking about? Often it's the ache of desire, the craving to give yourself away for a quick hit of pleasure or validation. But if you don't act on it, if you hold it, it becomes something different. It becomes yearning, and yearning, when not wasted, becomes a bridge to the divine. That's the alchemy. That's the transformation hidden in restraint. And restraint is not about repression, it's about direction. It's about realizing your energy has a purpose, and if you don't give it away to everything and everyone, it will start showing you why you were born. This is why all these ancient parables, from different lands, different cultures, different times, somehow echo the same thing. Because the truth doesn't change. Only our attention does. And in today's world, where distraction is sold to us at every turn, reclaiming this sacred power is a revolutionary act. So instead of letting your energy fall outward into screens, urges, and quick fixes, try this. Keep it. Not with fear, but with reverence. Breathe into it. Walk with it. Let it rise through your spine like a sleeping serpent beginning to stretch. Let it become your teacher. Because deep inside every ancient story is a secret meant just for you. When you stop giving yourself away in pieces, you remember that you were never broken. You were always whole. You were always chosen. And your power was never meant to be spent on things that do not last. It was meant to be offered in devotion to the path you came here to walk. In the noise of today's world, it's easy to forget. Easy to forget that your body is not just skin and bones, not just nerves and habits, but a temple, not made of stone, but made of light. You don't need to sit in a cathedral or chant in an ashram to find the sacred. You only need to stop, breathe, and remember. More and more people are doing just that, quietly, privately, not on stages or live streams, but in their bedrooms, in the early hours before the sun, in the silence just before they would have given in to an old urge, in that still moment where they pause and ask themselves, what if I don't give this energy away this time? That pause is holy, because in that pause, you are reclaiming something. This isn't about guilt. This isn't about shame. This is about power. It's about responsibility. It's about understanding that not everything that feels good in the moment is good for your mission. And if you're one of the few, one of the ones who can feel deep down that you're here for something more, then your relationship to energy must also be different. Not because you're better than others, but because your path is steeper and your calling is louder, even if the world hasn't heard it yet. The ancient ones knew this. They knew that the most powerful energy in the human body is the life force itself, the same force that creates new life, the same spark that built cities, dreamed of stars, and carved pyramids into desert stone. It is not meant to be wasted. It is meant to be lifted. And here's the wild part. People today are remembering this, not through preachers or books, but through their own experience. They're feeling what happens when they stop releasing their energy carelessly. They're seeing the return of their focus, their drive, their creativity, their sense of direction. They're becoming more aware, more alive, not because of any dogma, but because of a decision to stop living on autopilot. They are learning, just like the mystics did, that breath is a bridge. Every time you want to give in and escape through pleasure, pause and breathe instead. Close your eyes and feel that storm inside, that fire, that tension. Then do something crazy. Don't run from it. Feel it. Hold it. Let it stretch you instead of drain you, because that tension is not your enemy. It's your teacher. It's showing you that you're full of power you haven't learned how to carry yet. That's why breathwork, meditation, and stillness are becoming so popular, not because they're trendy, but because they work. They give your nervous system the space to catch up with your soul. They help you anchor into something deeper than the mind's constant noise. Stillness is not passive. It's a weapon. It allows you to sit with discomfort long enough for it to show you what it's made of. And often, under that discomfort is the truth. You've been leaking your power, giving it away to empty things, to fantasies, to scrolling, to invisible chains. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you stop numbing, you start waking up. That's what chosen ones are starting to understand. You don't become powerful by adding more. You become powerful by letting go of what drains you. No more negotiating with your sacredness. No more arguments with your potential. You are not here to waste your light in private. You are here to become so full of it, so rooted in it, that your very presence starts to shift rooms. You don't need anyone's approval. You just need to protect your energy like it's a treasure chest, because it is. And when you do that, when you choose presence over escape, devotion over indulgence, truth over urge, you begin to rise, not by force, not by effort, but like a flame that for the first time in years has room to grow, and this time, nothing can blow it out. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.